Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. I was 9 years old. We had just moved into a new house. I lived with my mother and my younger brother, who was 6 years old. I went to sleep and woke up sometime later in severe respiratory distress with an asthma attack. I went downstairs to find my mother, who was luckily still awake. I was frantic, trying to breathe. I then went gray and collapsed in the kitchen in my mother's arms. My heart stopped beating, and I stopped breathing. I went into complete cardiac arrest. I could see my mother, very distressed, with my limp body in her arms. I could see our living room and kitchen, where I collapsed. I clearly left my body and existed outside of it. As we had just moved into a new house, we had no phone connection. This was before mobile phones and the internet were invented. Luckily, my mother had a visiting friend who ran down the street, going from house to house, trying to get someone to ring the ambulance. Because we were new to the area and he was so frantic, it took quite some time before someone would let him in. Meanwhile, I left my body. I felt so calm and peaceful as I hovered above my body. I could see that my mother was distressed, yet I couldn't understand why she was so upset because I felt so peaceful. I saw the events of my life flash before me in a very calm and peaceful way. I had a sense that I had done my best. There was a spiritual being hovering next to me who I am tempted to call an angel. They seemed to be there to support my mother and me. My mother later told me that she also felt that spirit was in the room, guiding and supporting her to save my life. The spirit being guided me towards a tunnel that was made of light on the outside and darkness in the middle. It took me from human world to the spirit realm of peace, love, light, and well-being. The spiritual being guided me towards a tunnel, but then stayed behind to support my mother. My mother had learned CPR 20 years earlier at school, but here, she felt like this presence was guiding her in what to do. She commenced CPR on me and continued for 20 to 30 minutes until the ambulance got to the house. I felt total peace going through the tunnel. I was greeted by a group of souls on the other side as I said, my friends, where have you been?" The message I got back was that they had always been there for me and that they were pleased to see me again. At that point in my life, I had not had anyone close to me die, so I did not know this soul from this life. I was then guided towards the Source, God, or Supreme Being. Source was a beautiful, powerful, all-encompassing love, peace, and light. Being near this powerful being was blissful. I felt so much joy and peace. I felt so well. God said to me, "You know you need to go back, don't you?" I replied, "I don't want to go back." Then God said to me again, "You know you need to go back, don't you?" I again said, "I don't want to go back." Then God said, "You know you need to go back to help people heal." I then felt my spirit being shot back into my body at lightning speed. Perhaps this was a result of the defibrillation at the hospital. It felt traumatic how sudden this was. When the ambulance arrived at the house, they had to administer 2 adult-sized doses of adrenaline to revive my heart. They had no defibrillators in the ambulance at that time, so they had to rush me to the hospital to be defibrillated. When I arrived at the hospital, I was strapped to a board and surrounded by 20 doctors and nurses who tried to revive me with the defibrillators. I was resuscitated, luckily with no damage to my brain or any ill effects. The next thing I remember is waking up the next morning in intensive care and wondering why I was there. I did not remember this experience after waking up in the hospital. I only remember going to bed once and then waking up in intensive care the next morning. I didn't really talk much about the experience. It was, however, totally transformational for me. I developed a strong sense of purpose and constantly found ways to volunteer my time to support and help others. This eventually unfolded into studying psychology, counseling, and life coaching. My main goal was always to help others. I also became a spiritual seeker and explored Christianity, Baha'al, Catholicism, interfaith, indigenous, and spiritualist faiths. While studying for a master's training in creativity counseling, we did some breath work. I was 20 years old at the time. During the breathwork session, my whole NDE came back to me in vivid detail. I was surprised, overwhelmed, and confused. However, I was grateful to have a missing piece of my life come back into place. I have now developed my own sense of spirituality based on my NDE. I do, however, pray a lot and feel close to the spiritual realm. Since my experience, I have developed an ability to communicate with souls who are passing over, have passed over, or are in a coma. I often got messages from these souls to pass on to others. I also have psychic dreams and intuitive premonitions. I'm still trying to process this ability and how to use it to help others. When I told my mother about the memories of the NDE, she told me that she had also had an NDE as a baby that she did not remember until she was 30 years old. This experience also transformed her life. I am grateful that I had the support from her and that she believed me without question. I went to have 3 other close brushes with death: a shipwreck, 18 years old, a fatal train accident, 21 years old, and another severe asthma attack, 22 years old. However, I did not have another cardiac arrest. Fatal train accident, Glenbrook train accident, 1999. I went into the first carriage on the train with a friend. There were no seats together, so we kept walking through the carriages until we got to the third carriage that had 2 seats together. This could have saved our lives, as the first 6 meters of the first carriage ended up being crushed into 1 meter after it hit the back of another train. 7 people died, and 51 people were taken to hospital. As I walked out of the train and onto the tracks, I could see the souls leaving their bodies. I felt the need to stay nearby and support them. I didn't know what to do, but I stayed and prayed for them. My friend was a nurse and tried to help the passengers in the front carriage. She came back distressed, telling me that there was nothing he could do to help. We went to the funeral of a mother and a son who died in the incident. On behalf of the fellow train passengers, I got up to speak at the funeral to pass on our condolences. I then felt the mother visit me and say, "Thank you." Severe asthma attack, 21 years old. I was walking back from college to my car down a quiet suburban street. Suddenly, I had an asthma attack. I then realized that I was not carrying my inhaler. There was no one around. I became so short of breath that I could not breathe, talk, or walk. I sat down on a house fence and thought, this might be it for me. Then I felt an angelic being lift me up and carry me to my car. I felt them in my car next to me as I drove to the pharmacy. There was a car parking spot in front of the pharmacy, which was unusual. I felt the spirit being walk me into the pharmacy, and the pharmacist took one look at me and gave me immediate medication that helped me to breathe enough to get medical support. I feel blessed for having had these experiences, as I know that I'm supported and protected. I also feel a very strong sense of purpose every day of my life. I'm grateful for each extra day I have been given and try to make the most of each day.